Hi guys, welcome to another Jamaican video, a Jamaican living in Germany. Now in this video I want to talk all about my experience learning German, a language that many people consider to probably one of the toughest languages. So I'll walk you through my process of starting out with absolutely no knowledge of German 4 years ago to being at this point now where I would say I'm actually fluent. In 2015, I visited Germany for my vacation and I really enjoyed my time here, and so I went back home to Jamaica with this goal of one day returning to Germany to actually do my master's. And so in March 2016, I installed an application called Duolingo, and it's a language learning app. So in this app, there are different activities and different lessons that you can do to learn the basics about different languages, and it really helps, for example, with vocabulary and even understanding the basic grammar of different languages. This was my go-to app, and I was using this app every single day. At least 5 minutes I was learning German until I completed all of the lessons for German. Apart from Duolingo, I was also using music as a way to help me to learn the language. So I would be always listening to German songs, and then I would even translate the lyrics of these songs to English so that I could understand maybe what they were talking about. Music is a very powerful tool of learning anything, so it's like I could easily make associations with different words based on these songs that I was actually listening to. When I was driving across Germany in 2015, the radio was always on Antenne Bayern, and this is a radio station in Bavaria. And even when I went back to Jamaica, I was constantly listening to this radio station. I didn't necessarily understand everything that they were saying, but then more and more as I was listening to this station, I could actually pick up on certain words and again making these associations with different things. Now in Europe, there is what they call the Common European Framework of Reference, CEFR. And what this is just a standard for your language ability. So it starts at A1, and then there's also A2, and both of these levels are beginner levels. Then you also have B1 and B2, and these are intermediate levels. And finally you have the advanced levels, C1 and C2. For my master's, I was required to do German classes up to A2. And for this we had to do a placement test. Based on my results for this placement test, it was actually recommended I should start the course at B1. What that meant was that the things that I was doing with Duolingo or even just music, that somehow they helped me to recognize a lot of things about the language that I could actually identify on this exam, which meant that I already covered a lot of the basics in the language. And these courses really helped me a lot because they set a really good foundation for my understanding of the language in terms of conjugating different verbs, understanding when to use different things, the grammar, the vocabulary, the really long words in Germany, how to deal with those, and yeah, so many different things about the language that I'd never seen, for example, in English or even in Spanish. Something else that I also did at the university was this Tandemm program, where it's like you would have a partner and then you would meet, and for the first half of the session you would speak in one language and the second half you would speak in the other language. I mean, the other person was learning English and then I was learning German, and it's like we could kind of compare and we could help each other to like more or less improve our languages, because you're speaking to a native speaker, and I think that's definitely the best way to work on any language. Another thing that I did was that I would read everything that I saw, whether it was a paper, whether it was some sign, whatever it was. It's like once I saw words, I was like, I wanted to read to find out what it was. Sometimes I didn't understand what it meant, but I was reading nonetheless because I was trying to build associations. And then I was also listening to everything around me. So it's like just walking on the street and hearing people talk. I mean, not necessarily listening to what they're talking about, but kind of just building and improving my ear for the language, you could say. What definitely made a big difference was just being in Germany. I think if I was still living in Jamaica and attending courses and learning the language, it would be much harder because you're out of the context. But living in Germany and you're surrounded by Germans, you're surrounded by the language, then you start making certain associations, sometimes even subconsciously. Many language learners talk about immersion, where it's like you go into the culture and you immerse yourself, as one of the most effective ways of learning a language, and I can definitely attest to that. I also made it my duty to attend different things in Germany, like different events or different lectures at the university, I would be sitting there, I wouldn't necessarily understand everything, but then what I could understand, then that was also good, and what I didn't, then it was kind of like homework for me to kind of figure out what that was. What really helped me was the church that I belonged to. So like going to a German speaking church, I mean, you're gonna pick up certain words, and then there was even a point where I was actually translating from German to English for people at the church that didn't speak German. And for me, that was also training, because then it forced me to listen even more keenly to the language and to figure out how to translate different things. So it's like it was creating the wirings in my brain where I could then make the associations. Okay, when I hear that, I know what it means. I don't need to start thinking about every single word, but then I could actually, in the context and in the entirety, figure out exactly what is being talked about. The most effective thing was actually trying to speak German. Now, you can learn a lot of vocabulary, you can learn a lot of things about the grammar of the language, but if you don't attempt to speak, then somehow it doesn't create all the connections. Because when you start speaking, then you start using the vocabulary, you start using the grammar rules, you start putting it all together, and you kind of recognize how everything works together. At first, I had the wrong approach to speaking and to understanding the language, where it's like I was focused on understanding every single word instead of trying to build perfect German sentences in my brain before saying them. I kind of just started saying things, even if there were errors, even if there were mistakes, it didn't matter. I would just say it out loud. Because then when I would do that, I could hear myself and I could even correct myself right away, and I could recognize, hey, what you did there, that was good, okay, that could have been better, and so on. And having a conversation, especially with friends, it's like they were also then able to help me out when I was missing a word, and they could also correct me when I would use a word incorrectly or something would not be conjugated properly. This was possible because I had German friends that were forcing me to speak German. They're like, hey, we're not going to speak to you anymore in English, so you have to speak German. And this was additional motivation for me, because then it really forced me out of my comfort zone, because now I recognize, hey, I can't speak English anymore with them, so I have to try to speak German. I was passionate about learning the language. I really wanted to learn the language. It was one of my biggest goals. I was like, hey, yeah, I'm here to do my master's, but at the same time, I want to improve my German. I want to be able to speak German. Now, a lot of people would say German is hard and it's frustrating, it sounds terrible, and the words are too long, and so on and so on, and all the different stereotypes about the language. But I wasn't focused on these things. In fact, these are the things that kind of made it exciting for me, because I'm like, whoa, this language has these super long words, but then that's like really cool, because then in German, you have like one word to describe like a sentence in English. Learning a language has a lot of those points where you feel so dumb, where it's like you feel like you're starting your life all over again. You're going back to being a baby, where you're learning the letters and the vowels and the language and the sounds of the language and all that stuff. That can be very frustrating. I mean, I've had a lot of frustrating moments with German where I was like, oh, I'm just not making progress. But then just the fact of trying to exit my comfort zone and putting myself out there to say, hey, even if I sound stupid, even if I look stupid, I'm still gonna try something. Those were the opportunities that helped me to actually build my confidence and to build my fluency with the language. Sometimes I'm really amazed with the progress that I've made over the years. At this point, I've even done some amount of public speaking in German, and again, like communicating with my friends and so on. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, whoa, when did I actually get to this point? And I think that's the exciting thing about language. It's like when you put in the work, you see the results. One of the biggest benefits of learning German has been that I've been able to adapt to the culture, and I've been able to understand German culture much better because I know the language. So when it comes to, for example, doing business, going to the doctor, or whatever I need to accomplish, it's like knowing the language makes so many things so much easier, because I know language won't be a barrier. I don't need to worry about, hey, I can't communicate what needs to be communicated, or I won't understand what is being said to me. It's like that's just one less worry that I have because I actually know the language. There's definitely a lot more for me to learn and a lot more for me to improve, and all the different things that I spoke about in this video would kind of be my cycle to actually get to the next level. And I'm really excited to see what that will be. So thank you so much for watching the video, and see you in the next video.